The views expressed in this program do not necessarily reflect those of this station.
Tonight, Insights into Northeast Michigan presents to you a special town hall event where Democratic candidate Lon Johnson will join us to discuss important issues that affect the community and the state. Tonight's event will be moderated by Tim Kuehnlein. And now to open the discussion, Aaron Parsegian.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us in this very special edition of Insights into Northeast Michigan. Tonight we'll hear from Democrat candidate for the 1st Congressional District in the U.S. House of Representatives, Mr. Lon Johnson. Professor of Political Science and History at Alpena Community College, Tim Kuehnlein, will serve as moderator and has drafted questions that have not been given to Mr. Johnson prior to this live program. In addition, we did extend an invitation to Mr. Johnson's opponent, Republican candidate Jack Bergman, and we'll reach out once again following this program in an attempt to host a similar event with Mr. Bergman. So without further ado, let's begin.
Good evening. I am Tim Kuehnlein, and it is my pleasure to engage a conversation with a candidate this evening. The purpose of this evening's conversation is to meet and get to know the Democratic candidate for the congressional seat of the 1st District of Michigan. The candidate elected in the general election will then serve for 2 years as one of 435 members in the United States House of Representatives in Washington, D.C., representing we the people of the 1st Congressional District of Michigan. Remember, the candidate elected has the vote in Congress on issues that affect our lives in this representative system of ours. So understanding who the candidates are, how they think, and how they are likely to vote on issues is extremely important. So thanks for tuning in. The general election is November 8th, just over 3 weeks away. Mr. Johnson, welcome.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me on the show.
Let's begin with the first question and allow you to tell a little bit about yourself. Why should we trust you with this very important responsibility of representing us? And what is your track record?
Well, I think it comes back to shared values. I was raised, just like you were, here in, like many of the families here, with working hard, playing by the rules, never giving up. Those are the values I learned from a family with 5 generations in northern Michigan history. You know, those values saw me through a life of work. I was one of the first in my family to graduate from college. I was in Iraq in 2005 as a civilian. I came home in 2006, married my wife in Northport, and went on to work to invest in and grow U.S. manufacturing companies. You know, I believe it's those shared values and that outlook that I will take to Congress that I think will serve the people of the 1st Congressional District well.
Okay. What would you say is the most important issue facing the 1st Congressional District? Anything in particular that you would emphasize?
Well, there are 2 parts to that. I think, one, we have to protect what people have earned. They've worked a lifetime for their Social Security benefits, their VA benefits, their Medicare. You know, there are real efforts in Washington to privatize that, send it off to a corporation or to Wall Street. And I believe that's just too risky. It won't work. I believe that we should protect those programs. It's a promise that needs to be kept. The second major challenge here will be to create a northern Michigan and an Upper Peninsula where our families can stay and succeed. We're losing too many of our kids and our grandkids to downstate or out of state for jobs or for education opportunities. We need to invest in and protect our greatest assets here, our people, our land, and our Great Lakes. Okay.
It seems that Congress has become a secondary institution in our republic. It's as if Congress isn't really leading as a representative assembly as the Constitution purported and our founders intended. Power and attention has shifted to the presidency in ways that are almost kind of unimaginable. And this has been occurring for the better part of a century. Depending on who holds this power, it could be disastrous. Unless the checks and balances that our founders intended are invoked. And there's a lot of evidence to show that that's not happening. Congress is not standing up, doing its job. Do you see this scenario differently? And what can be done about the imbalance, if in fact this is real?
Well, we have seen more of the power shift towards the executive, and I think it is in part due to the partisan bickering that we have in our Congress. You know, it's hard. Our members of Congress, unfortunately, I think, over the years, we've become, the Congress has become more partisan, more divided, and we need to send people to Congress that are willing to work on a bipartisan basis. You know, we had that here for 18 years in Congressman Bart Stupak. You know, he rolled up his sleeves and he went to work to solve the problems facing the people of the Upper Peninsula in northern Michigan, and getting to that done on a bipartisan basis. The word compromise is not a dirty word. We need to have a Congress that can work with each other to get things done, to move our country forward, and I'm proud to have Congressman Bart Stupak's endorsement, and I'm proud to say that I will work on a bipartisan basis to get things done for the people of the Upper Peninsula.
So with the issue of Congress relative to the presidency, is this just a phenomenon that can be totally blamed on partisan differences, or is it more about the need for congressmen to start standing up to whomever is president, even if they're of the same party?
I think really what it is that we need action in this country. We have real problems, both domestic and on foreign policy, and when this Congress can't get along, we're seeing the executive, be that George Bush or Barack Obama, move to take things into their own hands. We have to have a Congress that can get along with other members of Congress. The House needs to get along with the Senate to pass laws that I think that if we do that, we can slow the pace of executive growth.
And why do you think this shift has occurred so much? Why so much attention to the presidency? I mean, I teach this stuff, and I see that we're oblivious to the fact that you and Mr. Bergman are even running for office. People aren't paying attention to this. It's not in our media. Do you have some insight as to what's happening?
Well, I think people are
here?
paying attention. You know, it's been my experience. You know, whether I'm at the gas station or the store, walking door to door, they're paying very close attention to their actions of their member of Congress and who they're voting for. You would be surprised how many detailed questions I get when I get stopped at a restaurant or at a gas station or at the grocery store. Okay. People are paying attention, but I think they feel a great frustration. You know, there are 435 members of Congress there, and you know they have won, and we need to send members of Congress to Washington who are going to work on a bipartisan basis to get things done. It's compromise, compromise, compromise.
Let me ask you this. Do you think our rights are being compromised by the executive branch with regard to things like the NSA encroachments?
I think we have, you know, a challenge here to balance both our civil liberties and the need to protect our country. I do believe that balance can be struck, but again, the executive and the congressional need to work together towards to find common ground.
Do you think the checks and balances are sufficient?
Yes, I mean, I think our constitutional the writers of the Constitution knew what they were doing. It stood
do we know what we're doing?
It stood the test of time. Yes, we do. Look, I'm not one of these doom and gloom that I think America is the best country in the world. And I believe that we have the best scientists, the best engineers, the best innovative workers. And I believe that if given the right conditions, our country will succeed. But we need to send members of Congress that are going to work to get things done on a bipartisan basis.
Okay, thank you. We'll be right back after these messages. Welcome back. Mr. Johnson, let's talk a little bit about national security. The largest portion of our national discretionary budget, it's nearly half of the total discretionary budget, as you know. I'm going to list off a series of issues, and I'd like to ask you to think and reflect on what you think is the most pressing national security issue in your mind. And I'll just rattle these off, think about what I'm saying, and you can reflect on those that you think are most important. The Middle East, global disparities and population shifts, environmental concerns, energy, European divisions and financial instability, the U.S. financial sector, Russia, Chinese expansionism, declining defenses and our military, investments in the military, fiscal insolvency, intelligence and cybersecurity, or something else perhaps?
Well, as someone, I was in Iraq in 2005, like I said, as a civilian, but I saw firsthand the challenges we face in the Middle East. I believe on the subject of foreign policy, we have to do 4 things. One, we need to keep weapons of mass destruction out of the hands of our enemy, nuclear, chemical, biological. Second, we need to deny our enemies safe haven. We need to deny terrorists safe haven, whether it's geographically, banking, or cyber. Third, we need to disrupt coordinated attacks. The kind of attacks like that we saw on 9/11, where it was multiple organized. We need to increase our surveillance and disrupt those. And then last but not least, we need to stop these lone wolf terrorist attacks, where we have one where we have an individual who has not assimilated to our country, has been radicalized, and then moves on our population. We need greater intelligence and the ability to move on that intelligence almost in real time. We have terrorism, I believe, is one of our biggest threats in this country, obviously, and I would work on those 4 things to protect us. We've got to be tough and smart.
Are we overly preoccupied with ISIS, however?
Well, I think, whether it's ISIS or whatever name the latest incarnation of terrorists are taking and organizing under, terrorism is a very real threat, and that it will unfortunately, it seems to be increasing, and we need to move to disrupt these terrorist networks.
Are we being pulled into a foxhole?
No, I mean, no, not, I believe that we have to monitor and be smart and tough here. We have to understand who these terrorists are, how they're being recruited, how they operate, and we need to eliminate them.
Okay. Next question, the national budget. Overspending and what I call under-budget tax policies. We know Congress controls the purse string, and the House of Representatives is a starting point. Congress, the President, have authorized to spend on our behalf. Can we cut our way out of this debt? And how do we fix the tax code to generate the necessary revenues to make up that difference?
Well, there's a number of things. We've got a $19.5 trillion deficit. And if we don't get our arms around that deficit, it will harm our country. I believe we need to go back to what's called pay-go. It is basically for any new spending measure brought into the budget, you must find a corresponding cut. That's how we operate our budgets at home and many businesses. Second, we need to get our arms around this tax code. It's 72,000 pages filled with loopholes put in there by lobbyists and special interests. We have many of our leading corporations paying essentially net zero in taxes. That tax shift is being put onto our middle class and working families. In 1952, we had corporate share of federal taxes was at 32%. Well, today it's at 10%. That cost is being borne by working and middle class families. Third, we've got to stop giving these tax breaks to corporations that are shipping our jobs overseas, and to individuals, billionaires and millionaires, that are hiding their money overseas. If you and I tried that, we'd go to jail. Look, we've got a tax code that's been rigged for the wealthy and the well-connected, and we need tax reform that's balanced.
Okay. What do you think about free trade, NAFTA and the Trans-Pacific Partnership? There's been a lot of talk about that lately. It ties in with this, growing the economy. What are your thoughts on this?
I'm opposed to the TPP trade agreement. Look, it was written in secret, and I don't think it addresses the major issues that are continuing to ship our jobs overseas: currency manipulation, labor standards, and so forth. We need fair trade. The American worker can compete against any worker in the world. We have the most innovative, hardworking people in the world. However, if we do not address the terms of these trade deals, we will continue to lose our jobs. We have over 40,000 agriculture and manufacturing jobs in the 1st Congressional District, and those jobs need to be protected.
Let's talk about the economy as it relates to class structure. The middle class has made ground recently with median income rising, at least in the aggregate statistics, but we're nowhere near resembling the 1970s equilibriums of the middle class relative to every other class. What can be done, if anything, about this gap between the uber rich and sustaining a vibrant middle class Can we have both in a stable republic?
We can. We can have a growing middle class and a growing economy. The way we do that, though, is we need to take our tax dollars and invest it in us, in people. Every time you invest in people, it pays off. We need to stop taking our tax dollars and shipping them off to Wall Street or some corporation that's 1,000 miles away in the false hope that that money will return back to northern Michigan. It won't. We need to invest in our people, our land, and our Great Lakes. That means we need to make college affordable. That means we need to bring high-speed internet and mobile cell phone service to every corner of the 1st Congressional District. That means we need to explore returning passenger rail service to northern Michigan. That means we need to get this new Sioux Lock finally funded. When we make investments in our people and our land, that pays off. We've got to stop taking our tax dollars and shipping them off to Wall Street or some other corporation, which in turn then just puts it off to the Cayman Islands or God knows where.
So you're saying the large wealth concentration and the current tax structure, it's not so much where the money is going, you're emphasizing where the money is going and whether we're getting it all, but the current tax code is, in your mind?
The current tax code is completely, it's 72,000 pages of loopholes put in there by lobbyists.
So
it's been rigged to the wealthy and the well-connected. Absolutely not. On the working class families of this country, absolutely not. They are paying enough.
What about the argument for cutting taxes?
I believe that with we should be raising taxes, and we should be making sure that people are paying their fair share and making sure that taxes are fair. We do not, when you have the wealthy and the well-connected paying a lower rate than somebody working 40 hours a week, I don't believe that's fair.
What about cuts? If you could name one thing that you would cut, what would it be? Cut in terms of tax cuts.
Tax cuts. Okay, yeah. Look, I think we need to lower the taxes on working and middle class families. And we need to make sure that the wealthy and the well-connected are paying their fair share and not hiding their income in some offshore bank account.
Okay. All right, thank you. We'll be right back after these messages. Welcome back. The next question is, what can be done to stem the inflation of the healthcare industry, including insurance, relative to the ability to pay? There's been a lot of movement with regard to Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, but one thing is clear, it has not stemmed the cost of insurance or health care.
Well, we have to stop playing politics with health care. You know, this Congress has now voted 50 times to repeal. We now need to roll up our sleeves and fix this. I believe there's a number of things that we can do almost immediately to bring down the cost of our medical care and prescription drugs. Number one, we need to give Medicare the ability to negotiate with drug companies. Currently, right now, Medicare system cannot negotiate with drug companies. That's a law that's been put in there by the pharmaceutical industries. If we give Medicare the ability to negotiate with drug companies, we would lower the cost of prescription drugs 20 to 30% almost immediately, saving $14 billion annually. $14 billion, that's savings that can be passed on to our consumers. Second, we need to not privatize Medicare. Medicare works. It has a 1% overhead versus 6% overhead of private insurance. Medicare works. We should not be privatizing it. Third, we need to, northern Michigan and the Upper Peninsula, we rely on our hospitals here. They have what's called a critical access designation. Without that critical access designation, many of our hospitals would close down. So we need a member of Congress that's going to protect that critical access designation. Last but not least, we need to give consumers the ability to go across state lines to get their insurance. Right now, if you were seeking to get health insurance, you can only go within the state of Michigan. We need to allow consumers to go outside the state and create greater competition.
Okay, you've made it very clear that Social Security and Medicare are not to be privatized. I'd like to elaborate a little bit more on why not, and how do you suggest we make them solvent for another generation without something changing?
Well, first off, Social Security is a system that has been there through wars, through recessions, through stock market crashes. Social Security works. It's a system that, it's a promise that we must keep. However, that does not mean that we should not see to it that it remains solvent. We can make it solvent by lifting the cap on who pays into the Social Security system. Currently, once somebody makes over $118,500, they no longer pay into the Social Security system, but yet they reap the benefits from Social Security. Somebody making $250,000 a year pays nothing into the Social Security system, while somebody making $50,000 or $60,000 pays. We need to lift that cap, and by doing so, we would create 50 years of solvency. The answer is not to privatize it. The answer is not to send it off to Wall Street. When you send our Social Security off to Wall Street, all you're doing is all we'll be doing is paying billions of dollars of fees off of these banks into stockbrokers and commissions. That's wrong.
Okay, thank you. You'd be a freshman congressman. What committees, if you could get your way, would you hope to serve on in the House?
Well, I think Ways and Means would be an excellent committee. I believe that Energy and Commerce or Appropriations, committees that could help the 1st Congressional District. You know, when you're the member of Congress from the UP or Northern Michigan, you have an obligation to bring back federal dollars that are investments into our communities.
Do you think our current congressman achieved that goal?
Well, I'm not here to, I'm not running against him, but we do need a member of Congress that's going to be thinking 5, 10, and 15 years ahead around one thematic, and that is building a place where our families can stay here and succeed. Now, to do that, we need to bring high-speed internet and mobile cell phone service to every corner of our community. We need to get this new SULOC funded. We need to explore passenger rail service. We need to make sure our education system is funded. We need to make sure that college is affordable. You know, we're losing too many of our kids and our grandkids to downstate or out of state. We can build a place where our families can stay and succeed, but it's going to take a member of Congress that has a long-term vision and the ability to get it done.
Okay, clearly you brought up education. Clearly many think that education has serious problems in this country, and it's almost indisputable. But the question is it an issue of standards or cost? Maybe it's both. How do we fix it, and is it the federal government's role to do that?
Well, are you talking about, the cost of higher education has exploded.
But we also pay more for secondary ed and elementary ed than any other country in the world.
Well, we have right now in Michigan, what we've actually been doing has been reducing our budgets towards our local schools. And again, in favor of giving out corporations tax breaks. That's wrong. 4 years ago, we took $1 billion out of the state's budget, paid for it by, and handed it off to corporations, and paid for it by cutting our schools by $1 billion. We need to invest in public education. When you invest in public education, you make sure that our kids can be competitive so that they can at least have a basis to move into a trade school or a community college or higher education. But you do not get there by privatizing or moving into a for-profit space with our education dollars. That's wrong. I believe in public education.
What's your opinion of your own running mate, Jack Bergman?
Look, I have enormous respect for his service to our country. However, I just do not think Jack Bergman is, he's not from us. And if you're not from us, you're never going to be for us. Let me give you an example. Just yesterday, we learned that Jack Bergman, while for the last 6 months going around telling everyone for the last 6 months that he was from Watersmeet, been living there full-time since 2010, we just learned yesterday that he's on a New Orleans school board and has attended 12 of the last 18 meetings, including the last one here in April. Now, he took a 4-year government appointment from the governor of Louisiana. I just do not believe that he's being truthful with us. He retired in 2009 in Louisiana, and he never came back to Michigan. He came back here, bought the nomination, now he's trying to buy this seat. I just think that's not right. If you're not from us, you're never going to be for us.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. In these last 30 seconds or so that we have, is there anything else you would like to share with the constituents that you would conceivably be representing?
I'm going to do 2 things for you. Number 1, I'm going to protect what you've worked a lifetime for, your Social Security, your Medicare, and your VA benefits. And number 2, I'm going to work to build a northern Michigan where our families can stay here and succeed.
Okay, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Best of luck. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of WBKB and WBUP, thank you for your interest in tonight's conversation with a candidate. Your vote determines who represents us in our representative system of government. If you have been registered to vote by October 11th, you are eligible to vote in the November 8th election. Visit michigan.gov/vote to learn more about the candidates and issues on your ballot this election. Thank you.
Insights into Northeast Michigan is produced by WBKB News. If you have any comments, suggestions, or topics you would like to see on a future show, please email WBKB News. This has been a production of Thunder Bay Broadcasting Corporation. All rights reserved.